Okay, so we're back. There was a lot of grappling going on last week, maybe even too much. So we're going to go over it here, and we're going to go over three main events. First is the IBJJF Nogi Grand Prix Absolute Division. The second is the first South American ADCC trials for 2024. And the last one is Fightpass Invitational 6. So let's get into it, starting with the IBJJF Nogi Grand Prix. First thing you probably want to know is, was this event good?
Nope.
I've seen worse, but this wasn't the most entertaining event, to be completely honest. Now, don't get me wrong, they had good names there, but that doesn't always make a good show. Shockingly, I think the gi matches, or at least some of them, were better than the no-gi matches. Before I get into that, let's get into the actual results. Things started off well with Kainan Duarte getting a submission over Haisam Rita. Then we went to Dante Leon, and he defeated Elder Cruz by an advantage. This was good, but the constant out of bounds kind of made me angry. At one point, Dante was going for a heel hook, and they rolled out of bounds, and instead of giving Dante the 2 points, which they should have, they didn't give him anything, and they just restarted him standing, which kind of made me upset. And this same type of thing kept happening, and I didn't like it. The constant out of bounds and the rules just kind of put a damper on everything, and I felt like people didn't really open up here. Anyways, next match, we had Giancarlo Bodoni, who defeated Patrick Gadiel by advantage. Wasn't that great. Next one, we had Pedro Rocha versus Roosevelt Souza. Pedro Rocha won by advantage. Also not that great of a match, a bit boring. Dante Leon defeated Dante Leon via points. Dante actually looked pretty good against Kainan, considering the size difference. But again, it's by points. He got like a nice pass and everything. Next one was Giancarlo Bodoni, who defeated Pedro Rocha by points. And this one, I felt like Pedro was kind of stalling a little bit. I didn't like this. And finally, Kainan defeated Giancarlo again by points, which is the second time. I believe Kainan also beat Giancarlo last year at the Polaris GP. So I bet Giancarlo's kind of steaming about that, but what can you do? Now, getting into the stats, this looks disgusting to me. I hate seeing all this blue and orange everywhere. You see, we got 3 advantage wins, and we got 3 point wins, and only 1 submission win. This is just terrible when it comes to a GP. You don't want to see that. In fact, I thought the gi matches with Tainan Dalpra, with Andy Murasaki, and with Cade Ruotolo were all better than the GP matches, which isn't good. Also, I'm not sure if they should be doing gi matches during this, and especially they had some like lower belt gi matches. Man, get rid of those. Just stick to the good stuff. It makes your event too long, and nobody wants these long events for grappling. A nice like 3-4 hours is good. Even 4 hours is maybe a little bit too long, but short one with good matches is better than a long event, especially if the matches aren't good. If you want to see more stats, just go to my blog. I did a whole write-up just on this event, but let's get on to more positive things. We can talk about more interesting stuff than this. So let's move on to the ADCC trials in South America. Now, these trials were actually pretty good. One of the things I didn't like about it, though, was there weren't lots of big names, and I think that's due to the fact that most of the big names are going to be doing it next week. The ADCC South American trials, they do one week and they do the second one the next week, which I really don't like. But stay tuned, I'll cover that one as well, so we'll see what happens there. Now let's look at the results. So the winner here at under 66 kilograms is Kennedy Masael. He is the son of Cobrinha, so Cobrinha Jr. He is actually a second place medalist from before, or actually maybe he's a third place. I forgot if he's second or third, but he hasn't won, but he's been there before. But since he didn't place last time, he had to go back, but he did it. I believe he's been training with Mikey Musamichi, who recently joined Cobrinha's gym, and so this obviously helped him, and he got it done. He's going to be back there at ADCC. At negative 77, we have Luis Medeiros. I'm not too familiar with him, but he is the winner here, looking pretty good. At negative 88, we have Charles Negromonte, who I believe trains in the UK under Roger Gracie, but came back to Brazil to win this, and he's going to be in at negative 88. Under 99, we have Cassio Costa. I wasn't too familiar with him, but congratulations to him. He's going to be at ADCC as well. And at plus 99, we have Jose Inacio. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Sorry about that. But congratulations to you. You're going to ADCC as well at plus 99. Now let's get into the women. technically these don't really even count. These women aren't going to be in ADCC necessarily, so this is just kind of a practice. But we had Brenda Larissa at negative 55 kilograms, looked really good. She's now with Alliance, used to be under Milky Galvao. At negative 65, we have Ana Kayla Cunha Quizero. And I'm sure I mispronounced that, sorry about that. But she looked really good, and hopefully this will help her get into ADCC. And finally, at plus 65 kilograms, we have Maria Rufato. So, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right either, but congratulations to you. You did a great job. Hopefully, we'll see you at ADCC, but you're going to have to win those second trials. Before we get into these stats, something I should mention is I only did stats for the finals and semifinals and the third place matches. So I don't have all the matches here, but I think this gives you a good overview of what happened because, to be honest, that is a lot of matches. So let's get into it. As you can see, we got 6 neck submissions or chokes, we got 2 arm submissions, and 5 leg submissions. Unfortunately, we got about 12 points, victories, and 6 decisions, which I never like to see. I always want to see it ended by submission. You know, it's a necessary evil. You know, sometimes that you can't settle it by submission, but it happens. But I don't like it when there's less than 50% submissions. I thought this card was overall pretty good, but it could have been better. I think one of the highlights was Gabriel Almeida's flying armbar. You could really tell he went all out. And there's some other people, you know, going out there too, but like I said, it wasn't the greatest event I've ever seen, but it was pretty good. I think recently the European trials and also the Asia and Oceania trials have also stepped it up, so I think they're looking about the same level as the South American trials, which I was surprised about. However, I can't say that for sure until next week because, as I said, this week lots of the heavy hitters weren't there, but next week they're coming out in full force, I imagine. But I think Pedro Mourinho and Roberto Jimenez are signed up, but they're in the US right now. They just finished the Fightpass Invitational, so I wonder if they're going to get back there and actually do the trials. I guess they have a week or so, but I don't know if they're going to be in fighting shape. We'll see. Grappling wise, this weekend just got better and better. So the Fightpass Invitational, that may have been one of the greatest grappling events of all time. Maybe not the number one, but it's pretty close. You got lots of great matches. Actually, all the matches were good. I don't think there was even any match that was boring, and there was tons and tons of subs. But first, let's get into the results. Okay, so the first match we had was Raquel Canuto versus Carol Rosa. This was kind of a fun one. I hadn't seen Raquel Canuto in a long time, but she put on a good show. Had a little bit of trouble early, but eventually ended with a rear naked choke in probably about maybe 5 minutes or so. This was a pretty good match. Check it out. I think it's worth watching. It's not too long and has a good ending. The next one was Shane Shapiro, who defeated Ben Eddy by arm triangle. I hadn't heard of Shane Shapiro before, but he was kind of like a wrestler type, had a really good top game, and I was expecting him to be like, oh, maybe just a wrestler or something. But he actually had very good jiu-jitsu, showed some nice passes, I think passed maybe 2 or 3 times, and eventually got the arm triangle in overtime, I believe. The last one for the prelims, I guess it was Giovanni Canuto defeated Denise Gomez by inside heel hook. Apparently Giovanna Canuto is an MMA fighter, but she has a long background in BJJ training with Cobrinha and Mikey Musumeci, if you can believe the commentators, that is. She looked pretty good. Was having a little bit of trouble with the legs, but eventually got the leg lock and scored the inside heel hook after, lots of good attacks. She was kind of in the driver's seat the whole time, but couldn't really finish, but eventually got there. The next one was J-Rod versus Jonathan Alves. I was really surprised about this match because I hadn't heard anything about it. I don't know if it was last minute or what. But I was really excited to see it, and it didn't let me down. Sometimes Jonathan Alves kind of slows down the match and it's not exciting, but J-Rod didn't let him do it here. He was all over him the whole time, just going crazy, passing back and forth, trying to take his back. And at the end of the regulation time, Jonathan Alves looked like he was completely gassed out, and J-Rod didn't even want the minute break. He wanted to get back in there, and once he got in there, he finished Jonathan Alves with a rear naked choke. I think this is a really good win for him, and he called out Tynan Dalper. I don't know if they'll put that together or not, but I was like, that actually sounds like a good match to me. J-Rod looked incredible in this match, and I think this, kind of propelled his stock up. Next one we had was Ronaldo Jr. versus Cody Steele. Ronaldo Jr. defeated Cody Steele by decision. I didn't expect too much out of this match. I thought, maybe this would be a little bit boring, but this was actually a really, really good match. I was very impressed by this. Ronaldo Jr. was very, very exciting. Sometimes he's, like the human highlight reel, but sometimes it's not so interesting. This time, he was on. Same thing with Cody Steele. They were just going back and forth. It seemed like lots of times Ronaldo Jr. would pull guard and then wrestle up into a single leg, and he used that to, take the back or get a takedown, etc. He did lots of good work. The same thing with Cody Steele. It was really back and forth the whole time. If you haven't checked this out, check this out. This was a really, really fun one. I think both did a really good job, but Ronaldo Jr. came out on top, did a little bit more with the positions and things, but I think a good showing from both of them. The next match was Victor Hugo, who defeated Roosevelt Souza via rear naked choke. Victor Hugo has been looking really, really good recently. He's gotten lots of wins, so in the heavyweight category, I think maybe he's the man to beat right now. He defeated Roosevelt Souza. They kind of went back and forth after a while, and then Victor Hugo took Roosevelt's back. Roosevelt Souza actually showed some really good back defense, but Victor Hugo is huge and he's skilled, and he was able to sink in that rear naked choke eventually. I think this was a really good match by Victor Hugo. Even though I said eventually, it actually wasn't that long. This was a fun one too. Good match, ends with a nice submission. Check it out. The next one we had was Mason Fowler, who defeated Pedro Marinho via arm triangle. This was a great match too, and this is one I thought this could be boring. Maybe these guys would, just like play patty cake the whole time, and they're doing like WWE test of strength and all that kind of stuff. But that actually didn't happen as much as I thought it would. At the beginning, I thought Pedro was winning. He kept doing foot sweeps to him. I think he got two Dayashi Barais that completely just knocked Mason down, and Pedro got on top of him. But I think there maybe 3 other times besides that where he actually knocked him down with foot sweeps, but he was just kind of, looking there, admiring his work, and, didn't follow Mason down. But he looked really good in the wrestling department, but he kind of faded after a while. Once he started to fade, Mason turned it up, and Mason said afterwards that was his plan. He turned it up, he ended up mounting Pedro Marinho and then catching him with the arm triangle, and that's all she wrote. So I think this was actually a good performance by both of them. This was a really exciting match, and to be honest, sorry to both of them. I thought this might be a terrible match, but I was completely wrong. This was a great match. If you haven't watched this is one I'd recommend you checking out. It was really fun. Next we had Nicholas Marigali, who defeated Mateus Diniz via rear naked choke. I don't even know why they had this match, to be honest. Mateus Diniz is a weight class under Marigali, and here, I didn't know Marigali's weighing in at like 232 pounds, which is huge. I didn't know he'd gotten that big. But he fought Mateus Diniz, and I think he was obviously the front runner here. So he went in there, and they just kind of stayed on the feet for a while, but eventually, I'm not sure if Marigali got a takedown or if it was a slip or something, but he got to the back of Mateus Diniz. He was saying all week he was going to armbar Diniz, and he's doing lots of trash talking, which I didn't really understand, but he ended up finishing with a rear naked choke. It was a good performance. Marigali looked good as always, but I think people kind of expected him to beat Diniz, but this was a good match, nice and fun, so check this one out too. Next we had Nicholas Nicky Rod Rodriguez, and he defeated Roberto Jimenez via points. This was a really good match. I thought maybe Nicky Rod would just completely overpower Roberto, even though he hasn't been able to do it before. This one was a really nice back and forth where both men were doing lots of techniques. Nicky Rod was on top most of the time, but Roberto was doing some nice inversions and takedowns and other things. So I think it was a really nice back and forth. This was actually one of the most exciting matches. If it went a little bit longer, Roberto might have gotten Nicky Rod. This was one of the first times I've seen Nicky Rod get tired. This was a really fun match, scrambling back and forth. Nicky Rod looked good. Roberto looked good. The match was good. Watch this if you haven't. This is one of the ones I recommend watching. It was really fun. Even though it ended in points instead of submission, it's definitely worth watching. And finally, we had Craig Jones, who defeated Rafael Lovato Jr. via inside heel hook. Craig was there for a good time, not a long time. I think it was under 2 minutes or so. So Craig basically just pulled guard, went into his Z guard, grabbed the other leg, and eventually just moved into kind of a 50-50. I think he's trying to go for the saddle, but couldn't quite get in there. So he went to 50-50 and just heel hooked Lovato. Felt kind of bad for Lovato, but you know, it is what it is. It was a good heel hook, so watch it. It's really short. Shockingly, Craig seemed like he was completely gassed, even though it was less than 2 minutes long, but whatever gets you through it. He won anyway, so congrats to him. This may have been one of the best grappling cards I've ever seen. There's basically no match that you have to skip. All these matches are good, and you can kind of learn something from all of them. All of them have lots of action. There's not like stalling in them. So I would recommend watching this whole event. I think I'll be watching it multiple times. It was a lot of fun, but you can also learn a lot of technique and things from them. So just really, really good. Let's get into the stats now. Let's look at this chart here. This is what everyone likes to see. Look, we have 60% of matches ending in chokes. We have 20% of matches ending in leg locks. Only 10% ended in decisions, and only 10% ended in points. This was an amazing event. I can't even believe we had this many finishes. Even the point victory and the decision were good. Those were great matches. Those were worth rewatching. I hope people just keep the same mentality when it comes to other events. I don't know what happened here. They weren't calling stalling as harshly as they were at the last event. I don't know if they just got rid of that or they're just being a little bit less strict. There wasn't that much stalling in this, so even if you wanted to call it, there probably weren't that many opportunities to even do that. So I don't know, maybe we'll see the next event. I hope we can get many more events like this, but this seems like maybe it's an anomaly. So I don't know if we can continue this streak, but 80% is great. So if you haven't watched this, watch this. But let's get into some of the other stats. As you can see here, the rear naked choke was the #1 sub, and we also had an inside heel hook, 2 inside heel hooks, and 2 arm triangles. A little bit surprising, but that happens. I'm not going to show all the different stats here, but if you go to my blog, you can see all 3 of these events, and you can see all the stats for them, including takedowns, passes, sweeps, etc. So go there and check that out. The stat I am going to talk about here is the action stats. So here you can see the Nogi GP action stats. These are based on 5-minute intervals, and it's how much you're seeing something per 5 minutes. So you see here like attempts per 5 minutes. That means you're trying something every 5 minutes. If we look at the action score, this is the total amount of passes, sweeps, takedowns, etc. there are per 5 minutes. And here we have a score of 4.46. This is the second lowest one I've recorded. The lowest one I've recorded was the IBJJF Nogi Worlds. This is kind of terrible, to be honest. That means you're not even trying to do 5 techniques every 5 minutes. That means you're just blowing like a 1 minute and you're like, I'm not even going to try to do anything this minute. Terrible. We look at the technique score. This means how often are you actually completing a technique. This is 0.69. This is also really bad and one of the lowest scores, if not the lowest, I've recorded. I can understand if the action score was low. If the technique score was high, maybe it means people are just using high percentage techniques and they're only acting when they're sure they can do something. That's not the case. It seems like nothing's happening, so you can't even use this for like technical study because there's barely any techniques. This was awful. Appalling, atrocious, dreadful, gruesome, loathsome, revolting, ghastly, and basically any other synonym for nasty work. Let's move on to the next one. As you can see, the first South American trials were better. It still wasn't the most exciting event, but it wasn't bad either. I think it was just kind of like, kind of somewhere in the middle. We had about a 5.14 action score and a 1.31 technique score. You got a good amount of action, but there's also kind of like some stalling too. Like I said, the I don't know what you call it, the Hulk Hogan test of strength, that was in there for some reason. I don't know why everyone was doing that when they were trying to wrestling. There's no reason to do that, but people were doing it anyways. but we still did get some nice action, so I can't complain too much. This was overall a pretty decent event. I'm hoping next week will be even better because they have some bigger names, but I thought this was good. I saved the best for last, like Vanessa Williams. Look at that action score, 9.35. I've never seen an action score since I've been doing this that high. That's the highest one ever. That means there's almost 10, that means almost 2 attempts every minute, which is good. The technique score is also 2.81. That one's also very high. People are just getting after it. Everything in here was really exciting. You can see the breakdown for the different things. There's 3.45 submission attempts every 5 minutes. It's crazy. So overall, this was just really, really good, exciting, just everything you want in matches. There's not much more I can say about this event besides it was great. So I won't. It's already been about 20 minutes. I think that's enough. Next week, I'll do another video and a blog about the second South American ADCC trials. And also check out my blog if you haven't. I have more stats on there than I showed here, so I give it a little bit more of a breakdown. So check those out. But until next time, thanks for watching. See you.